Good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Christina Aylar, and I'm delighted to be here today to be presenting a collaboration between Santa Paula Latino Town Hall and the Teatro de los Américas. Santa Paula Latino Town Hall has been very fortunate to be working with Juliana Acosta and Saul Escobedo in a grant-funded community arts project this year. As a special project for this month, which is Women's History Month, we have invited 5 distinguished personalities from our Ventura County to talk about some of their experiences working in Ventura County throughout their lives. I'm delighted to be here today with Ana Bermudez, Tony Punky Baez, Marta Hernandez, Cristina Villaseñor, and Elizabeth Arenas. Beginning with Ana, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, connection to Ventura County, and why you do what you do.
Sure, Christina. It's nice being here with you. My name is Ana Bermudez, and I am currently working as a curatorial consultant. So I'm working for myself for the first time in many, many years. I was born and raised in Fillmore, California, and I've grown up in Ventura County. I've only left the county to go away to school. I went to Scripps College in Claremont, where I studied art history and Spanish. And I actually ended up leaving after 3 years because I could not find myself. It was such a culture shock being in this environment. So I took some time off, came home, and met my future husband. And he was going off to San Jose State, so I decided to go off with him. Finished my education there and got my degree in Spanish and art history there. And came back home, got married, and my degree worked towards my credential at Cal Lutheran. And so I started my career as an educator for many years before I went into curatorial work at museum work. And so that's basically it. I retired. Retired is not the right word, but I left the museum about almost 2 years ago and decided to start my own consulting company, doing curatorial consulting with museums. And I just finished up an opportunity that I had with La Plaza de Cultura y Artes in Los Angeles. But my real passion is history and the history of the county. So that's really where my work is focused on now. I do what I do because I see so many young women that don't seem to know what exactly it is that they want to do with their lives. I do it for my daughters, for my granddaughters, for your children and your future grandchildren, because it's so important to be not only just a woman, but to embrace your Latina self. When I first started working at the museum, I was the only female curator in a museum of probably 8 in the nation. That's a lot. And I didn't know this. I found this out by a consultant that the museum had. And I didn't realize how important it was to have this role and to be able to be a role model for other people or for other women.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here today again.
Thank you.
Punky.
Yes, my name is Punky. That's my nickname. A lot of people know me as Punky. And it's endearing to me because my BS, they fight over who named me Punky. So I use it because of who I represent, my family, my familia, and also as chair for the BFLX legacy. They also know me as Punky. But I was born here in Ventura. I also lived in Oxnard. For about a year, I lived in Mexico. I came back and finished my schooling here, went to Ventura High, to Ventura College, and then got married and had my first baby. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then I started working with the county, and I retired from the county after 36 years of service, and then I started volunteering. And I was fortunate to be part of this committee that was representing Tortilla Flats. And I became their secretary, and then now I chair that group, which is an honor. And we continue to have our gatherings yearly. COVID kind of, put that away for a while, and I was kind of worried if we were going to get our people back. But our first event, people showed, and there was like 200 people. So I said, yes, this is still going to go on.
Amazing. Good job. And if you had to sum it up in one sentence, why do you do what you do?
I do it as an honor to homenaje to my elders. It's from the heart. I know the sacrifice that they made to come here from Mexico in a covered wagon and to, flee the revolution. So it's just that, and then the love that I've learned from that community, the history, the stories that they shared that I now know. I just think it's important to carry that on.
Very powerful.
Thank you for, inviting me to join this distinguished panel. I'm Marta Hernandez, and currently I'm the executive director of a nonprofit group, Californians Together. We are actually a coalition of 28 nonprofit parent and civil rights organizations, and we come together to promote really equitable education policy for California's 1.1 million English learners. And I have been the director now for 3 years, and I, like the women before me, I retired 6 years ago. And I retired as assistant superintendent from Fillmore Unified School District, so there's a connection to Anna. But I have spent 42 years in K-12 education. So I have served as a district administrator, a county administrator at Ventura County Office of Ed. I directed curriculum and instruction. I worked also at Oxnard Elementary as an administrator in curriculum. I spent some time at California Lutheran University heading the bilingual teacher training program there. And I also served as a bilingual and special education teacher. And so after 42 years, I, have spent probably about 38 years here in Ventura County. And my work in Ventura County, however, goes beyond education. I have been involved in lots and lots of community organizations. I was a founding madrina for the Rebozo Festival. I was a member of Las Contemporaneas with the Ventura Museum of Art. My heart really, we've spent a lot of time working with United Farm Workers. And I guess my career, I would say, has been focused on the children of immigrants and also bilingual education. And I have committed a lot to the arts, and I'm really proud of the fact that I played a role in starting the first mariachi at Fillmore High School, and felt really proud of that as I retired from the system. And why do I do what I do? I'm the oldest of 9, and I am a first generation college student, and I saw that education is the key. It's the key out of poverty. It's the key to success. And so, my brothers and sisters followed suit. All 9 went to the university. I have 2 brothers who are physicians, a sister who has her PharmD, a computer, scientist, an organic chemist. I have 2 teachers. And so I just attribute that to my mom and her belief in public education. And so that's why I do what I do. I consider myself a por vida advocate. When I went to the university, I found the Chicano movement, and I never let go.
Okay, thank you. Yes, hi everyone. My name is Cristina Villaseñor, and I am currently a council member in the city of Fillmore. And I am born and raised in the Santa Clara Valley. Was born in Santa Paula. My mother's side of the family is actually related to Ana Bermudez in Fillmore. And so I grew up in Santa Paula, and my parents are first generation Chicanos, and they were able to go to Ventura College, and my dad went up to Cal Poly for a bit, and he started a construction company. It turned out to be a very successful construction company. And so I grew up very middle class, I mean upper middle class, went to St. Bonaventure High School, and was not political so much to say in any way, but I did go to UC Berkeley for my undergrad. And when I was there, that's where I joined different clubs, and particularly the Raza Recruitment and Retention Center. And this was something that where college students would go back during our spring breaks and over summertime, and we'd go to high schools all throughout California, and myself going through high schools in Southern California, recruiting more Raza to come to learn what it takes to get into the UCs. And so that's where I really began to learn about my Chicano heritage, about the importance of representation, and really started to have a passion for my community. After that, I stayed in San Francisco, and I worked for Latino Issues Forum. And this was one of the first public policy institutes focused on Latino issues in the whole state of California. And there I worked on issues of disparity in healthcare access. And I was really mentored by some wonderful people who took me to Sacramento, and I learned what it was like to just be part of the legislative process, what policy is, what it takes to get into policy. And that really kind of gave a passion for me. And so while I was at Berkeley, I also took a class in public health. And that opened my eyes in seeing that our healthcare is very much connected to social justice, right? Access to healthcare, our environment, the pollutants that are part of different communities, these are social justice issues. And so I found a real passion for it. And I learned that if I wanted to go further in this area, to go and get my master's. So after working for a while in San Francisco at Policy Forum, Latino Issues Forum, I went to UCLA. I got a master's in public health, and I started working for LA County. And I did a lot of work there to help folks in Obamacare and get that kind of health coverage. And I always had sort of in the back of my mind still that idea of, of being that representation, of knowing that if you want to see change, that you've got to be that person. And so in 2020, and I was at this point in time, I had been home with my daughter for a few years, and I wasn't really connected again to my community of Fillmore. I'm living in Fillmore, and we had the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and we had that movement of folks wanting to be held accountable, or people wanting to hold others accountable, and really talk about what it means about race, and have these discussions. And so in Fillmore, there was a group of us that wanted to talk to our local leaders and just have community discussions and say, if we see the larger picture, but what's happening here locally? Are there areas that we can improve? And some local leaders didn't talk to us. And that really kind of set me on a path of saying, you know what, we need some other leaders in here. So that got me, I ran for city council, and I won. And so this is my 4th year now being on the Fillmore City Council, and elections are happening in November, and I plan to be on the ballot then too. So sort of that's my story in a nutshell, and why I do what I do. Being in office and serving as a public servant, it really keeps me connected to my roots. My grandfather, again, he came over in the early 1930s, and some of his history is that he was one of the founding members of the Casa del Mexicano in Santa Paula. And so I feel that in our family, almost in my genes, there's that passion for serving the community, for being representative. And so that's one of the reasons I do what I do, and I do what I do for my daughter too. She's in the audience here today, and I want her to have that, to see that her mom not only is doing the mom things of school and housework and different things, but also talking about inclusionary housing policies and transportation policies, and that, we can do it all. So that's why I do what I do. Thank you.
On. Congratulations. And finally, Elizabeth, my fellow Santa Paulan.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Arenas. I'm born and raised in Santa Paula. I am a daughter of 2 immigrants from Mexico. They came as an American dream, as most of our parents or grandparents. You know what? They come from poverty. Like, I've heard stories of where they came from and to what they become to be. They showed us how to trabajar y a trabajar y a trabajar. Si no, no vamos a hacer nada en la vida. So that's where my mom, her first business was a flower shop. Helped her with that. It was like my flower shop as well. After that, she loved cooking. She always said cooking was something that you get your family. Always the food reunites the family. So from there, she got a restaurant, which is Vince's Coffee Shop at the moment. They bought the building. Their accomplishment was paying off that building for being immigrants. So my dad had told my mom that it was something that he wanted to yell out to the world, because an immigrant who came from poverty owned that building on Main Street. So it was a huge accomplishment for him. And besides that, he had a logistics company. So that was another story of his. And the restaurant, my mom started getting a little sick. So she didn't want to go through her medical. And it was like, you know what, Mom, I'm going to go help you. I was a housewife. So I was like, I'm going to help you. Do what you have to do, and I'll help you. And I love cooking too. I love to cook for my family. Sometimes I don't like it so much because I cook all the time. But so I started helping and I was like, take over. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna tie myself here 7 days a week, Mom. So next thing you know, I was like, you know what? I'm already running this business, so might as well. So I took over 4 years ago. I think it's gonna be 5 years. I took it a couple months right before the pandemic. So that was fun. And I do what I do because I love to cook. I love to see families who, I started waitressing with my mom when she got the place. And, those kids are off in college or they got married. And, you see all these families reunite and they come over for the holidays. And it's just, I don't know, I love it. And I love to see my town grow, trying to grow my business as well. And it's you have to give out more to your community so your community knows that you're there for them when they need help. But yeah, that's why I do what I do.
That's amazing. And the food that you cook is great as well. It's such a pleasure to see healthy businesses in Santa Paula, and yours, especially with those walls. It's such a bright spot now. I love the changes. One thing that has come out of some of these introductions is the connection to family, the connection to community and history. We have like an undercurrent of knowing the history of the county and what it means to be in the moment and what your work means to have that perspective of where we've been and where we are going. So I hear about the visions that all of you have put forward as far as working together for better changes for our communities. So coming back to that, let's talk about some of the things that you brought to share today. And starting with you, Cristina, if you would talk about the book and your family's connection to the Santa Clara Valley.
Absolutely. So I brought this book. It's called Don Pablo, the memoir of Jose Pablo Reyes Villaverde, and it's my grandfather. So back in the late 70s, story I hear because I was small then. My grandfather had retired. He worked first as a farm worker for the first part of his life here in the U.S. And the second part in construction. And so when he retired, my grandmother said, you know what, Pablo, you should start, todo en español, necesitas escribir su vida, tu historia. So he did, and he started writing on steno pads. And after a while, he had collected about 20 of them. And they got put away in closets and garages and boxes for more than, my gosh, I want to say 25, almost 30 years. And so we were able to find him. And an aunt of ours was able to to bring them out. And it is my grandfather's story from the first time that he can remember when he is a little boy, and Pancho Villa is coming to his village in Hidalgo de Parral, Chihuahua, to when he he crosses over in I want to say it's 1929, and he tells his story of working the railroads and working up in Yakima, Washington, up in Oregon, doing melons in Arizona. And he talks about his love life. He talks about his girlfriends. He talks about how he fell in love with Guadalupe, who was my grandmother, back in Mexico, and all the times that he would go back and visit and back and forth. And he talks about establishing his family in Santa Paula at 147 Garcia Street, and his life here. And the second half of the book is, I think, where his heart was about how the Casa del Mexicano was formed, and how he and other leaders in the community, Mexicanos, saw the need to have community, to have the sociedad, and be proud of our culture, like have the fiestas patrias and all these different things. But it takes a lot of commitment. So he talked a lot about what that organization meant. And I really want to say that the Casa del Mexicano, I think, really spurred the idea of leadership and organization amongst Chicanos and Latinos in town, in Santa Paula. So it's really a wonderful story. And it's at the Blanchard Library in Santa Paula, and many others too. And anyone wants a copy, we have more copies too, if anyone would like to read. But I just wanted to share it because it is my inspiration. It keeps me grounded to where my roots are, and that just, again, over the course of 2 generations, to have someone who came up from, he says he wasn't able to go over the hills, so he had to go around through the ocean, to get here, because his little jalopy car wouldn't take him. But he literally came with my grandmother with 25 cents, and the promise of a job. The promise of a job for Santa Paula Citrus Association, and that's where it started. And so, anyway, I just wanted to share. It's very important to me.
Christina, can I ask you
Yeah.
if it's just memoirs, or are there photographs in there as well?
There's photographs as well.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. And then I want to say that my father and his brother and my other aunt also contributed their stories of what they remember growing up with my grandfather, and so that's sort of a appendix in the back. It's a really nice story. Thank you.
The history of the Casa del Mexicano is very interesting, and Casa del Mexicano has been a long time supporter and collaborator with Santa Paula Latino Town Hall. I heard recently when we were coordinating an event at that space, and the administrator for the space, he told me that he had a closet just full of papers, and it was a kind of burden for him because he was constantly trying to figure out where things were going, and it's just all of these papers that no one has dealt with. I thought that'll be a great project one day, to also go back through to all of the events that have been held in that venue, to see what happened.
It's the nexus for the Mexicano community in Santa Paula since those times, almost 70, 80 years ago. That's when it started. So
Yeah, that's something special.
I just want to add, because I had the honor of being the principal of Thiel School, elementary school in Santa Paula. And as you know, Casa del Mexicano is right next door. And so it played a big part for me as a principal. We had many parent events there. Our school really didn't have a big auditorium, so we would always partner with the Casa so that we could have events and parties and bring parents together. And so it's just something, I think, that kind of connects us all. And, I had relatives in Santa Paula. I'm really from Azusa in the San Gabriel Valley, but we would travel to Santa Paula. And I remember visiting relatives on 12th and on Mills and on 10th. And we would always go and pass by the Casa del Mexicano. So I just think it's just part of, yes, as you said, an important part of history of Santa Paula. As you know, I'm in education, and I've been in education a long, long time. And so we have this initiative where we are trying to nurture the next generation of English learner advocates, because veterans like myself one day are going to be retiring for real. And so we need, to carry on this notion of advocacy. And so we have this initiative, and this token here was given to all of the participants. And of course, I received one too. And to me, this represents that we're stronger together. It's really that we need to work together to achieve our goals. We need to work in collaboration with our parents, in collaboration with our community. And so, I don't know, it just meant something very significant to me in terms of the importance of organizing people in order to better the community. But I also just really quickly want to share as a community, this is really a poster that we give every year to a district that is establishing multiple pathways to biliteracy and helping their students to eventually earn the state seal of biliteracy upon graduation. And so my work has been about uplifting the assets that students bring to school, their culture, their language, their experiences. And those are assets that we need to build upon. They're not deficits. They're not something that's in their backpack and they need to leave it at the schoolhouse door. We need to encourage that they continue their home language, that they embrace their culture, and that we become, as California, a multilingual, multicultural state. And that, again, just kind of unity in the fact that diversity is a strength and an asset. So.
Could you speak a little more about English learner advocacy and what that looks like now? Like, what does that mean in school, and what kind of our hopes for schools now that we are beginning to see more dual language immersion, or more like you're saying, encouraging children to not consider that schools as the place that you leave your maybe Latino identity and you learn to be something that's foreign to your experience. So can you speak a little bit about some of the positive changes in the education system and where maybe you hope that it will go?
So I have to say that my organization actually 12 years ago fought for 6 years to adopt legislation, to pass legislation for the state seal of biliteracy. And we were the first in the nation. But we had to fight 6 years because we had a bill. Of course, we go to, Sacramento. We, have people sign on to our letters. We talk to people. We build networks. We get people to join us in speaking up and being persistent. And so the first time we had a bill, it was vetoed by the governor. So then 2 years later, we tried it again, and it was vetoed by the governor. So then what we thought is we need a different strategy. So we were able to get 50 school districts, and Ventura Unified was one of the school districts, to offer a district seal of biliteracy. And so then the next time with the new governor, Governor Brown, we had people who had already established dual language immersion programs. And so we were able to take people like parents and students who could speak in 2 languages to speak at the hearings, to speak on behalf of why this is important. And I have to tell you that 11 years later, we now have 50 states, because South Dakota finally passed their legislation to offer a state seal of biliteracy. And so we had to change the hearts and minds of people about biliteracy and bilingualism, because we had a law, Proposition 227, that almost eliminated bilingual education in California. So we we're going to fight. We were going to persist. We were going to speak up whenever we could. We didn't know it would take 18 years to reverse that law. But we finally did with Proposition 50A in 2016. So we have persisted, and so now we have the State Seal of Biliteracy. We also have pathway awards. We have been able to get grants through our policy and our advocacy to help districts initiate or expand their dual language immersion programs. We have fought to increase the number of teachers who can get their bilingual authorization. And so advocacy, what advocacy is a lot of hard work. It's rolling up your sleeves. It's working together because we're stronger together and not in silos. It's persisting. And if, you lose the battle, the next day you get up off the floor, you wipe the tears away, and guess what? You think of another strategy and you try it again, and you try it again until you succeed. This last year, we passed 4 bills through our advocacy, and now we're a coalition, right? And so when we have partners, and when people hear Californians together, they know, what are we doing for English learners? We better take care of, okay, we need to do this, so it's taken, 25 years. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary, but this wave of support for biliteracy actually happened with the passage of the State Seal of Biliteracy.
What a story. I had no idea, but congratulations, and thank you for bringing to light the fact that you got it up to the desk and it got vetoed twice, but it still came through in the end. That's tough. Yes.
I first want to thank you for your endeavor and those that have helped you. When I started school, my first language was Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And it was traumatic, as a little kid,
Yes.
not knowing the language. And my teacher actually went to my house and told my parents that she's got to speak English and you need to start teaching her. And my dad, the precious man that he was, said, no, this is my house. She's going to speak Spanish. When she's in school, it's your job to teach her English.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so we fight for every English learner like yourself, right? That's what, we do.
That was actually a rule at our house. Casa español, la
Yes.
escuela inglés.
Yes.
So I'm with my kids. Once in a while, they get the Spanglish out of me, but it's something. And all of my kids 2 of the oldest ones are fluent in Spanish on reading as well. So yes, it is very important.
Would you like to share a little more about tortilla flats?
What part?
There's so many facets.
There's so many parts. I think the importance of it, for me anyway, was actually when I started helping Anna gather stories and artifacts, which resulted in a wonderful exhibit at the museum.
Give us a little introduction to the history of the place.
Well, it all started back in the early 90s, like in about, I want to say 92. They had a gathering of the people from the barrio at a place called Nickelby's on Main Street in Ventura. And I went to that event, and it just took me back. It took me back because all the people that were there knew each other. We were all like family. Oh, there's so-and-so and so-and-so, And from that event, there was a feeling of the importance of that gathering and to continue, a reunion of some kind. They didn't know what, but they felt the importance of that. And then they created a committee of people who actually lived in the flats. And then they started having their annual reunions. And during this process as well, there still is an artist, M.B. Hanrahan and Moses Mora, who took it upon themselves to do these murals representing the neighborhood, which was another little specialty for the people that lived in the neighborhood, because they could go actually see their family, on the mural. And when they dedicated the mural, to my knowledge, it's been the only time where they actually closed Figueroa Street to have the celebration for those two murals. And now there's another mural on Ventura Avenue and Main Street. So it just continues in similar ways, of letting people know that there was this neighborhood at one time, and the history of all the people that lived there were workers of the community. They helped the community, and they were the hard workers. They were neighbors that helped each other because it was during the war. They had their victory gardens, and they would barter, and actually go next door and borrow the cup of sugar, a lot of love, a lot of it's interesting to me how we live today, where a lot of us don't know our neighbors, but in that era, everybody knew each other. Everybody knew each other.
And for people that don't know Punky and Christina, it's our Chavez Ravine in Ventura. It's a story of a displaced community that happened because of the freeway. So, and it's such an interesting story, like Punky said, and I had the honor to interview so many of the residents who were so excited to tell their story and feel that it was museum worthy news. So, and I thank Punky, because the first meeting that I went to the Legacy Committee meeting. Do you remember that? And this woman would not talk to me. It was like, who are you and why do you want to know this? So, and Moses Mora had told me, if I can get through to Punky, I've got the key to the whole neighborhood, which was very true. So, yeah, we did so many things. Punky was there daily at the museum, just having loan forms ready for people that wanted to bring their artifacts in, and talking to people and connecting me with other people. So I thank you for that, Punky. Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah, as Anna said, it's just like I went to a presentation over at what's it called in LA? It was close to Olvera Street, and they were having a talk about Chavez Ravine, and I could close my eyes, and everything that they were sharing were exactly the same as our people here would share in just a different locale. Yeah, it did a lot.
Same story echoing all over the place. And it means so much too when the assumption is that your story doesn't matter, right? That it only happened here. And then, but when we tell stories and make sure that they get shared and they get out there, we start to see these patterns, and then again, find those connections and solidarity across geographic spaces. And Anna, this is all your work, right? You've always loved history and museums.
So, yes, I was an only child, which is unusual in familias mexicanas, right? An only child. So my mother had me very late in life. She was 42 when I was born. My father was 26, so there was a huge age difference. My father had come over as a bracero, and my mother was a maiden aunt left at home to take care of her mother. So it was decided that she wasn't going to get married, but she had no idea when she met my father that she would ever fall in love with anybody. So it's a good story, but I'm digressing. So yes, as an only child, I was always around a lot of family, always taken to, it was a time when you would visit people, you would visit the neighbors or visit familia. And my mother always took me along, and I was fascinated to hear stories that were being told about the family.
So, yes, I grew up with this love of history. As a curator, everybody says, oh, you put up art exhibits. And I said, yeah, I do, but I do history exhibits as well. And history has always taken the back seat. But now that I can do basically what I want, I'm really focusing on family history. And I'm in the process of starting to write a family cookbook, but having a lot of anecdotes and stories about the family itself. So in 2004, my cousin Jaime, who lives in Los Angeles, had decided that he was going to remodel his house. In the basement of their house was this tortilladora, so all this tortilla making machinery. And he called me and he said, we need to get it out of here after we remodel my house. What are we going to do with it? So I started calling the cousins. Nobody wanted it. It's heavy, it's old, and what is anybody going to do with it? So everyone said, call the museum. So we took it out of my cousin's basement, drove it back to Ventura County, and it sat in our garage for a while. And I called the local museum, the museum in Ventura County, where I eventually ended up working, and they didn't want it. But one of the volunteers there had worked at the Smithsonian. And she says, oh, you have to call Raina Green at the Smithsonian. So I emailed her, and before I knew it, she and her associate, Steve Velasquez, another curator there, flew out to see this. And they decided that they wanted it. My mother was still alive. She told them the whole history of my grandmother having had this tortilla making machinery because after my grandfather died, she didn't know what to do. She honestly did not really need money, but she wanted to have some at least pin money or something so that she could give the grandchildren or whatever. So this became her side hustle. She wanted to do this, make tortillas. And the property that my grandmother lived on was a 2-lot property, so it was quite large. And it had a large garage in the back that had cuartitos in the back. And she set up one of these cuartitos to make her, her masa and to make tortillas. So this went on for years until she decided that she didn't want to do this anymore. And then my cousin ended up buying the tortilladora from her and taking it to Los Angeles. But anyway, the Smithsonian loved the story of my grandmother having her negocio, and she would sell to the local little markets that were there in Fillmore as well. And they said, no, this is great. This is perfect. We're just doing a new exhibit is opening up on food and the history of food in the United States, so across the nation. So this would be great. We can set this up right next to the margarita machine that's coming from Texas. So this is what they decided to do. So they came, they picked everything up. And along with it, they took my grandmother's apron as well and some family pictures. So in 2019, my husband, my son, and I flew out to Washington, D.C. We had an opportunity to go and see this exhibit. So we called my friend Steve, who I'm now working at the museum, so we've become close friends. He says, yeah, come for the food weekend. I want to show you the exhibit and what's going on. So we were able to see my grandmother's photograph and the tortilladora and her apron in the exhibit, and it was really a great thing. So he took us to dinner that night, and when we were at dinner, he presented me with this book, Smithsonian American Women. My grandmother's story and a photograph of the tortilladora are in the book. You can kind of see it right there. So we were so lucky to have this and so moved that they would be interested. So many people always say, oh, well, with the Smithsonian, what are they going to want with my junk? Believe me, they want our junk. If we have Latino photographs, anything, they are very, very interested. So hang on to it. Don't throw it away. Talk to me. We will get it in there somehow. We have already, after this, we have 3 items now at the Smithsonian. One is in the food history exhibit. We have a crucifix that my grandfather brought with him from Mexico that is in the new Latino exhibit there right now, which is a precursor to the new Latino Museum. So it's such a great story, and I'm really happy for my family. I'm very proud of my family, and Yeah.
And last year I actually saw it at the Smithsonian.
go?
I did.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, yeah, my husband Aurelio said, come, look, look, look. It says Fillmore. And I said, oh, I know.
Absolutely,
Yeah. It was exciting to see.
It's been a great story. My mother was so proud that she had this donated before she passed away. So, it's been really good.
I just wanted to have a quick time check, which is that we came to the end of the cutoff at 3, but I'm hoping that everyone can stay for maybe another 20 minutes so that we can get to some more deep conversation. Great. If it's all right to start with you, Elizabeth, one of the issues that we wanted to talk about today is about, connecting to the history of the county, the history of the world in general. Women are often not featured. And we have this problem with representation of women throughout history. And all of you have, I'm sure, been, as Anna mentioned, the only woman in one room, 2 rooms, every room, it feels like. And I'm just curious to what your feelings are about representation of women, of Latinas in particular, in your experience or in the experience of you and your family.
Well, you know what? I noticed, and it wasn't brought to my attention until my husband told me. We've been having some problems at the restaurant. And I do believe it has to be that I am a woman and I am colored. And he brought it to my attention. I was like, we can't think like that. But it really does come out to that. And it all has to do with, no offense, but with our Santa Paula. I don't know what's wrong, but I'm working myself through it. But it is something that I do see. And we are in a new generation where you would see that girls saw that more in the past than what we did now. But I'm working through it. I'm learning. That's why I got my friend Laura Espinosa helping me. But it's all it is. You need to be guided and ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get anywhere. And you do have to educate yourself and all these other with Latinos and unite and work together. But it is an obstacle and it's not easy, but I'm working.
Can I ask if this is something that you're seeing with your staff or with people that are coming into, customers that are coming into the restaurant?
No, it's not customers. It's just obstacles. That's what I mean. Like
Mhm.
if I have an idea to do something, here comes the city. You need to do this. And I was like, no, I asked. And it's little things. I've written them down. So I'm ready for them when they want to have a sit down. But it's just little things that I see that it's just, I don't know. It's codes, and there's not a code for that, but they're making one up now. So it's a way that I'm working with them, and I know we have to be friends. They say you unite with the enemy, become friends with the enemy. So it's little things like that, but it's a headache, something that you shouldn't worry about, and we shouldn't worry about, but it's something that bringing attention every single time. So it's.
That sounds really frustrating, because that is often just a space for inequality, is that when there is enforcement or when there are rules, they pop up for some people and not for others. Sorry.
No, and I could
About Fillmore.
I could piggyback off that really well, and I think say that is why one of the many reasons why representation matters, right? So as Latinas, as women of color, of those who come from a working class background, and if you're able to sit as a decision maker in these things, city councils and different boards and commissions, it's really important, because we bring the perspective of those that might not be in the room who are making those decisions. Case in point, something again with like a city issue about enforcement, or anything it might be. Like in Fillmore, I try to always think, is really the viewpoint of our more vulnerable, our low income, our immigrant community, our children, our mothers, are they represented here when we're making decisions about local business and economic development or the parks that we have? And to be honest, I'm often the one bringing it forward, and others who have been supportive of our community have brought it forward in the past. But these are systems that have been in place, or these are institutions of power that for a long time have been run by mostly white Anglo men who do not have that perspective, or might have a more corporate or other way of looking at it. And I point that out. And I think it's important for us to, wherever we are, right, wherever we're representing, to say, representation matters. I am bringing the perspective of many people, maybe even the majority of people in our community, but maybe they're not in this room right now. And so in order to improve our communities, to make it better for businesses, to make it better for our families, we have to bring this perspective forwards. And we can't do that unless we're supported by others, supported by our families, supported by our community, and we're able to make those steps and let our voice be heard. So, I'm glad that you are speaking up, and I'm glad that you are, being that person. And I'm hope that those people in the city and part of your elected officials hear you, and say, understand that perspective. That's what I try to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I have been working in education for 48 years, and in every position that I have held, there has always been an issue related to being a woman and or a woman of color. And it shows up in different ways. Your ideas cannot be kind of your ideas, really. Your ideas then become your boss's ideas, and they get credit for it. You write something, and then it really then becomes your supervisor's body of work. You have to work twice as hard and do twice as much just to kind of be on par with everybody else. And, I noticed, for example, in one situation, wanted to put on an event, really a dual language immersion institute to help our teachers get professional learning. And I had to write a proposal. But the math person didn't have to write a proposal for the math event. And the science consultant didn't have to write a proposal for the science event. So, but okay, a proposal had to be approved by the higher ups. And then, you can't charge this much money. What are you going to do for food? I was just lucky that we happen to own a restaurant, and I can say, oh, don't worry about that. I know somebody who will even donate the food for an event, even if it's for 150, 200 people. But then, oh no, you can't show up the other people who do events who are serving sandwiches. So you can't serve tostadas because it'll show up, so just little things like that. If I was president of the California Association of Bilingual Education statewide. And the person that I shared an office with was the president of, AXA, right? But I could not, she could take calls on behalf of AXA. But if I took calls on behalf of GABE, I would have to take vacation days for those hours that I was on the phone, right? I couldn't be on the phone. I couldn't go to a conference without it being vacation time. So there were a lot of obstacles that were maybe some were subtle and some were blatant. I kind of liked it more when it was blatant because then everyone could see. But that has been, a bigger issue to me in terms of being a woman. Those have been the biggest obstacles that I've had to overcome. And it's very frustrating. It's unfair. And it's just the way of life. It's what you have to do, and you just have to persist.
Turning to you, Punky.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on
I agree,
representation?
as a woman, in general, whether you're white, black, or brown, you have to work harder. Thinking back when I was working, I made a point to do the best I could, no matter what the job was. where they wanted to send me, I was going to do my best because I know that it's a reflection on me, not only me. I think of my father and I think of my mother who instilled those work ethics in me. So I had to do my best. And it was frustrating when someone was hired and I had the lower position, but I knew more and I would have to train this person and that person would get, the promotion. That's very hurtful. Yeah. But I still did my job. I did the best I could and you just move on. You just move on.
Anna, anything to add?
Incidences, there's two incidences that come up in my mind that have stuck with me for a long time. And one of them was when I first started teaching, before I had my credential, I went to work in a parochial school, Catholic school. And I taught 7th and 8th grade throughout my teaching career. And I loved middle school. It was great kids at that age. So I walk into the school that first day, and the kids are already in the classroom, most of them. And there's this tall young man standing in the doorway. And he's staring at me as I'm walking down the corridor. And as I get closer to the door, he yells into the rest of the classroom to tell the other students. He says, "Well, you're right. We got the Mexican one." So I knew from that first day what I needed to do to prove myself worthy of, and this is one young man who came back to me years later and thanked me for the education he got. So you just feel like you have to work a little harder all the time. At the museum in 2014, there was an incident where we were between directors, so there were interim directors coming in. And there was a position open for an exhibition manager. And I was basically doing the job already, but they wanted to make it a permanent position. So I walked into the interim director's office, and this is another woman. And she looked at me and she told me to my face, she says, "I'm sorry, but we can't give you the position because you're a Latina." So it was just so infuriating. I just got up and walked out. She ended up giving the position to someone else, and it absolutely did not work out. So I ended up with the position anyway. She left very shortly after that, but it's just that kind of thing. Martha understands some of the things that I went through at the museum. Martha was part of a group that I helped found in 2008 called Las Contemporáneas, which is a group of professional Latina women that were there to support the exhibits and the events that we had at the museum. We had many, many successful events, didn't we, Martha? From film festivals to Dia de los Muertos events, but also they were there to support in case there were any problems that came up. And there were several times at least that Martha and the other women would go and speak to the director and say, this is not appropriate. You cannot be doing this. So they pretty much kept everybody on task and were so supportive to me, and I really thank them for that. But yeah, it's a lot of it has to do with, yes, being a Latina, I think, is one thing. Being a Latina woman, of course, absolutely, but just being a woman. But I have never had anybody, and it's like Martha said, you'd rather have it blatant, tell it to my face, okay, yeah, you know where you stand, but it's still difficult to hear.
I just want to say one thing, my first day as principal in Santa Paula, I'm dressed up, I'm the new principal, I'm so excited. And someone said, "Oh, are you the new food service person?" And, it just kind of takes you aback, because how could you, a Latina, be the principal of the school? And so just wanted to kind of share that in concert with what, Anna has had to go through.
And it's still happening. I mean, recently, the county is supposed to be celebrating 150 years. And I've tried, I've tried to get an exhibit going in the community. I applied for a grant that they were giving, to help with it. They didn't give it to us. And I hate to say it, I said, but I think it's, it's racial. It is racial. So if I want something, I need to tap into every person that's in charge of that event. I was successful at the first celebration. I think it was before COVID. They had a big event at the Plaza Park in Ventura. And I was able to do that event and, show our exhibit, our archives. And the people loved it. The people loved it. And a lot of people were surprised and, they appreciated it. Oh, I didn't know that this was there. And so it's their loss.
All of our losses, really. And thinking about our community now, if we can end on a positive note, and this is coming toward the end of our time together, but maybe back around, because Anna said it, you said that some of what you do is also to think about women who may not have a path or are still figuring things out. So thinking back on all of the challenges that you've overcome or how you can have empathy for someone who's in a struggle today, what are words of wisdom that you might want to impart on a generation? Or since I can sense the powerful women who raised you, are there anyone who you would like to amplify and say, hey, I heard this growing up and it carried me, and I'm going to say it again now?
It's nothing that my mother always supported everything that I did. She was definitely a go-getter. She was an activist in Fillmore, always got involved politically, and also at her church. She was the first Latina ever to become president of the altar society there. If you were Mexican, you were a Guadalupana. If you were white, you went to the altar society. So she was very proud of the fact that she was actually the president of the Altar Society. And so that was a great thing. Words of wisdom, though, I always remember my dad, because he would always tell me, no te dejes. And he would always say, no te achicopales, which I don't know exactly what that means, but I think it just means don't let anything get you down. So that's what I like to tell people, no te dejes, just be yourself. Don't let people walk all over you. You have to, speak for yourself. And if you can't, then we will help you in some way.
My dad taught me at a very young age. And again, I think it's because of what they went through. He told me, never, ever be ashamed of who you are. You always be proud that you have the Mexican blood in you, the Azteca blood in you. Don't, and recently I just learned that I have other tribes. I was so happy. And culturally, it goes, to the center, to my soul. So I just tell myself, okay, you just keep going. Don't give up, because there are people out there that watch us and that appreciate our work, and it'll come back. It'll come back. So we have to be leaders of the light to show that things can get done by, brown, colored, whatever, women. It can be done.
Usually it gets done better from my experience. But anyway, my mother always said, be proud to be Mexican.
Yes.
I just always remember that. And so I get that from my mom. And from my mom, she was very shy, but she advocated, and she advocated for her children. She went to the school, made sure we were in the right classes. And so she, worked at the polls every single election. She made sure her relatives went out to vote. She told them how to vote. And she had her sign in the front yard. And so But in terms of words of wisdom, kind of similar, to me, it's like, si se puede. Don't let someone tell you what you can or cannot do. And so that's really, really important. And also, if you're at the table, if you are at the table, you have to speak up. You have to have the courage to speak up, because that's why you're there at the table. But also it's important to have an echo. So I always kind of like to make sure that I know who is at the table, and to find out who might be my ally and who I could reach out before I go to the meeting, so that when I say something, it doesn't just diminish and just kind of evaporate in the air, that someone else would say, I agree with that. I think that that's a good idea, Martha. So always have an echo and don't go alone. And, I say it, that we're stronger together. We are stronger together. We shouldn't be, siloed. We need to speak in a unified voice, for the benefit of our community and our children and the future.
No, all wonderful, wise words. Say my family, my mom and dad and my grandparents have also always told me to, along with stepping up, but be humble and always remember where you came from, and always, wherever you are, however high you get or status-wise, you need to turn around and you need to help those who are making their way up too. You've got to extend that arm. And another thing that is wise words that I want to bestow to others in our community. I had a conversation, it was with our city manager, and said, there's not many like you. And I said, no, actually, there are many like me, many. So just in our single community of Fillmore of 16,000, I don't consider myself singularly, of a unique type. I think there's many, many strong Latinas, educated, and I've told this to others. I said, are you good at your job? Yes. Okay. Do you manage people? Yeah. Okay. Are you organized? I was like, you can be on city council. I think that there's and it's created by others. I think it's created by those who have set up the systems of sort of making it seem like these boards and tables are put up here and they're for other people. But no, they're not. If you are a competent person, you care about community, these are the areas for you to be in. This is not something that's for others to do. It's for you to do too. So I try to bestow that too.
Like she said, no te dejes. Always, no te dejes. My mom, no te dejes. So every time when we have these problems at the restaurant or personal, she's like, remember why I struggled all the time owning a business? Yo no sé hablar inglés. Tú puedes. So it's always, you can, sí se puede. So that's the words of wisdom. Always, sí puedes, sí puedes. Yes.
That's amazing. This is
Yeah, pleasure to get to know your story.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. This is wonderful.